Welcome to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI, your home for the politically homeless, streaming live at KVI.com and the KVI app. Coming up this hour on the most dangerous show on the airwaves, the shooting in Seattle. Katie Wilson says she's going to find accountability. Have you tried looking in the mirror? That's just one place to start. It's just an idea. But before we get to any of that, my friends, time for your daily dose of adrenaline.
You want me to stick this into my heart? Are you f***ing nuts?
Years and years and years, I have been ranting and raving about the Law Enforcement Assisted Diversion Program. I have been screaming about how this program is ineffective and a failure since at least 2018. What this program is designed to do is release criminals. That is what it's designed to do. No matter how they sugarcoat it, our revolving door justice system that we have here in Seattle, which has now been rolled out across the U.S., is based on this model of no accountability whatsoever. Now, I was a newbie to politics back in 2018. I was getting involved because the bad policies of Seattle were affecting my family, affecting my community, and I said I had enough. I said, why are we dealing with these prolific offenders all the time? And I decided to run for Seattle City Council. Now, at the beginning of my race, people thought I was for sure going to get through the primary. People thought, hey, he's on Fox News all the time. He's raising more money than anybody else. His team is knocking on more doors. So there were a lot of people in Seattle who were petrified that I might actually become a member of the Seattle City Council. One of those people, I believe, was Lisa Dugard, who at the time, LEAD was a program just here in Seattle. It hadn't been rolled out nationally yet, and she ran into me at one of these meetings I went to because I was campaigning for office. It was a public safety meeting, I believe, in South Seattle, and she asked if I would meet with her. So I said, sure, no problem. Happy to. Your place or mine. And I went to their offices at LEAD. And I said, now, Lisa, I'm going to have some very tough questions for you. And she said, no problem. So there goes young, naive Ari Hoffman. But young, naive Ari Hoffman in politics at this point had lots of financial damage from these bad policies, affecting not only my community, but also my businesses, also my home, you name it. I was dealing with the same problems everybody else in Seattle was dealing with. Break-ins at my businesses, attempted break-ins at my house, homeless people everywhere, including cemeteries I volunteer help manage for my synagogue. I was dealing with all the issues everybody else was, and I wanted to change it, which is why I ran for Seattle City Council. So I figured, okay, the LEAD program has been at the center of this. They just turn people loose and turn people loose and turn people loose. Let's go find out. So I go into their conference room at LEAD. I don't know if it's the same conference room they have today because now they've got tons of government funding from not just Seattle, King County, and the state, but also nationally because this program has been rolled out to multiple states. And I'm sitting there, and Lisa's there with two other people, and they're talking about how great this program is, how people get back on the straight and narrow, and here's a story, and here's a story. And I said, that's wonderful. Do you have any data to back that up? Silence. Crickets. E-I-O-U. It was like every vowel in the world came out of their mouths, but no actual data. Well, Ari, you have to understand. I mean, it's a case-by-case basis. I go, great. Tell me how many cases you handled and how many of them got back on the straight and narrow path, because what I see happening out on the streets is the complete opposite. We'll get it to you. 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 No problem. We'll get it to you. You think I ever got that data? No, because it's flawed. And they've been using the same failed data for at least 10 years. Now, I lost my race for Seattle City Council, lost to a socialist. Shock, shock. We live in Seattle. But I kept up the fight against LEAD. And I was pleasantly surprised when Former Seattle Mayor Bruce Harrell, during his first couple months in office, called for an audit of the program. So let's go back in time. It's 2026 now, which means it was about 2021, 2022. Had to be 2022. 2022, he calls for an audit of LEAD. And I said, hey, maybe I was wrong about old Brucey. Maybe he's actually got the stones to change things and fix things and say, hey, we shouldn't be funding bad programs because we just see these guys getting released and getting released and getting released and getting released and getting released. And they have 50, 60, 70, 80 arrests. Well, what happened shortly thereafter? There was pressure from the Seattle City Council. There was pressure from the activist class. And they never audited LEAD. Well, now somebody has. Friend of ours from the show, our new friend Eric Zimmerman, who works over at the Washington Policy Center, released today a bombshell, damning report analyzing all the numbers that LEAD has been using for the last 10 years and showing that the program is a colossal failure. You are 3 times more likely to end up dead than on the straight and narrow and rehabilitated. That's what a failure this program is. It also shows that either nobody at LEAD can do math or people at LEAD are intentionally lying about the math. So, this report says that their major reduction claims of arrests and felony charges was substantially overstated. I mean, this is damning, absolutely damning. For more than a decade, governments across the U.S. have been told that Seattle's law enforcement assisted diversion program produced remarkable results. Participants were 58% less likely to be arrested, felony charges fell 39%, and employment and housing outcomes dramatically improved. Well, it seems like the felony charges fell because we stopped charging people around here. Maybe that's why they fell. It turns out none of these stats are actually real. The August 2026 National Retraction Brief, authored by Washington Policy Center Public Safety Solutions Policy Director Eric Zimmerman, alleges that LEAD's foundational research was repeatedly misrepresented as the Seattle-born program expanded across the country, helping influence legislation, government grants, municipal budgets, and other public and private funding in more than 20 states. Among 176 LEAD participants examined for employment outcomes, 91% remained unemployed on average. If you have a program that is failing 91% of the time, you have a problem. In fact, Zimmerman's analysis shows you were better off going to jail and you would get better employment after that. But that's not what the left wants. What does the left want? Abolish the prisons, abolish the police, get rid of jail. That's what they want. The report contrasts those results with 2019 Bureau of Labor Statistics research tracking men after release from at least 6 months of incarceration. According to the BLS comparison cited in the report, 33.9% were employed within 1 week of release from jail. 50.3% were employed by week 10. What's a better outcome? 91% failure or 50% success? Anybody want to look at that? Anybody good at math around here? Can anybody help me out? This is a real tricky one. According to the report, 3 times as many LEAD participants died as the estimated number who gained employment during the study period. LEAD research has been promoted with claims that participants' odds of being housed increased 89%, or participants were 89% more likely to obtain permanent housing during the follow-up. Of 146 participants who were unhoused when they entered LEAD, which means homeless, an estimated average of 19 were permanently housed in a given month during the 18-month follow-up period, equivalent to approximately 13%. So you housed 13% of people in permanent housing. That's it. After millions of dollars, you had only 9% of people get a job and only 13% of people get off the streets. You think this is success? You think this is success, and you rolled this out across the country? Oh, but you lied. And you said 58% of people are going to get jobs. 89% of people are going to be off the streets. No, it's basically the opposite of what you claimed. Shelter placement performed somewhat better, with an estimated average of 31 participants appearing to be sheltered in a given month. Even combining shelter with permanent housing, the report calculates that LEAD only achieved a 35% success rate in connecting initially unhoused participants with either shelter or permanent housing. There's another major problem. The portion of the LEAD study did not use a control group. The report, for anybody take science in middle school, anybody? If you're doing a science experiment in middle school, any of that stuff, Kevin's shaking his head. You didn't do science? You didn't light things on fire to see how many calories are in stuff? Come on, that was the most fun day. That's where I learned all this stuff, right? You think I do science? I don't do science.
Of course I did. I just didn't retain it.
Didn't retain it. Okay, so here's how it goes, guys. If you want to do a study, you have to say, okay, here's the people we're going to experiment on, with, study, analyze. Here's the group we're not going to do anything to. That's your control group, where you go, how are things normally? How do those things last normally, so you have something to compare it to? So, the country's sheltered and homelessness rate declined slightly from 70.5% in 2012 to 69.4% in 2014. So even though the homeless problem was still very, very high, it went down a smidgen, a tiny little smidgen, but not in LEAD. It actually was the opposite. Zimmerman concludes that connecting participants to shelter and housing may nevertheless represent LEAD's most plausible treatment effect, beyond reducing contact with the criminal justice system, arguing the program could potentially be more accurately understood as a point of arrest intake method for housing first programs. That's it. So because they managed to get 13% or a max of 30% of people in housing, that's the only upside to this thing. That's it. Because even on permanent housing, the number of participants who died was approximately half the estimated number entering permanent housing during that study. So what that means is, if you give a drug addict or a criminal permanent housing that's paid for by our taxpayer dollars, they're still going to be criminals. They're still going to be drug addicts, which means they're probably still going to die. Just now, they're dying on city-run property after milking the taxpayers for everything they possibly could until they die. Despite the abysmal results of the program, LEAD was being promoted locally and nationally using dramatically different numbers, including that participants were 58% less likely to be arrested, which just wasn't true. Zimmerman's report argues that researchers reported an odds ratio that was subsequently promoted as 58% reduction in crimes, arrest, and recidivism. It just wasn't true. It just wasn't true. The report identifies similar problems with claims that LEAD reduced felony charges by 39% and improved employment outcomes by 46%, arguing that promoters repeatedly confused mathematical concepts, including odds, probability, and absolute versus relative change. I'm all of a sudden having flashbacks to algebra right now because I sucked at all of that. Wait, that's statistics. See, I don't even know which kind of math it is. That's how bad I am at math. But you know what? I can see what's going on the streets. I can see. It's the same prolific offenders. How many times have we seen study after study saying it's the same 100 people that are committing these crimes time and time again? I actually went to court once. I went to court, and I was standing there watching some of the cases because somebody back then was telling me, Ari, you got to come see this. You got to see how these guys are just picked up by LEAD and released. You got to see how public defenders are refusing to prosecute. You got to see what's going on in King County's courthouse. You got to see what's going on in Seattle's court. You got to see all this stuff. And I went down and checked it out. And it was happening right before my eyes. My friend was sitting there with a laptop, pulling up the details about each case as it was being heard. 50 arrests, 60 arrests, 70 arrests. And by the way, when I met with Lisa Dugard, Seattle is Dying was relatively new at that time. And I said, well, why do you think a person who's offended 50 or 60 or 70 times deserves a diversion program? Once again, I got the alphabet. I got the vowel soup, A-E-I-O-U. That's what I got from them. Nothing concrete. For arrest, the report identifies an unadjusted 22 percentage point difference between lead participants and the control group after entry. Zimmerman cautions that even the difference cannot reliably be attributed to lead because the groups experience different recruitment practices, policing patterns, timelines, and geographic conditions. Lead participants also appear to have benefited from reductions or dismissals of charges that affect subsequent warrant arrests in ways the control group did not. So you know what that means? Lead comes in and says, "Give him another chance, Judge." And they go, "Sure, no problem." Now your charges are wiped out. Now your warrants are wiped out. That's messing with the numbers, and then they go on and reoffend again. According to the report, the King County Prosecuting Attorney's Office was an unblinded operational partner. Unblinded operational partner. That's a fancy way of saying they knew what was going on. And prosecutors could take lead participation and progress into account when determining whether and when to file felony charges. The report argues that the 11 percentage point unadjusted difference in felony rates cannot be cleanly attributed to lead changing participants' criminal behavior because the justice system itself treated lead participants differently. See what I mean? Oh, sure, you're with them. You know what it's like? You know what's seen in Goodfellas? When Henry gets arrested for the first time, Kid Henry, right before he becomes Ray Liotta. Kid Henry gets arrested for the first time. And he goes and he stands next to his lawyer, and the lawyer's just kind of nodding at the judge, right, with that big smile on his face. And you know he's like bribing the judge, or the judge goes, "This is the mafia. I'm not going to screw with them." That's what lead is. It's the real life version of that.
I'm guessing when the person with lead gets out of court, there's not a bunch of people waiting on the steps outside that say, "Hey," and
congratulations.
I can't repeat one of the other lines on here.
Why?
You popped something.
Is that a problem?
I don't know.
But yeah, there's no Paulie waiting. Well, actually, there might be. They just don't look Italian, I would say, probably, right? There are some people out there waiting for them. It sends you back to a life of crime. Now, this thing was rolled out. Santa Fe, New Mexico, Albany, New York, North Carolina, Baltimore, Maryland, San Francisco, Los Angeles, Washington, D.C., Portland, Oregon, West Virginia, New Jersey, Maine. This thing was rolled out across the country. Millions of dollars of funding were poured into it, and all of it was based on false information. All of it. None of it was real. Now, I have reached out to Lisa Dugard, and I have reached out to the lead program. Kevin, what do you think the odds are of me hearing back from them at any point? Lisa usually, like Kevin says, 0. He's holding up a giant 0. Now, usually Lisa Dugard and lead reply to my requests for comment. I wonder if I'm going to get one today because this blows open a hole in all their arguments that their math was wrong or deliberately fudged. My guess is I'm probably not going to hear back from them. However, later today during 4:30, Eric Zimmerman is going to be joining us to tell us that not only is all this true, but the study is infinitely worse and shows more problems. So if you want to know why we have a prolific offender issue in Seattle, it's because we have programs like LEAD that continue to divert prolific offenders. It's because we have prosecutors that won't prosecute because LEAD says, just give them another chance. 71 is the charm. Give them another chance. 71 times is the charm, right? And this is why you have the problems you have on the streets of Seattle. When you say crime numbers are falling, are they actually, or are you just wiping away the crimes because of the LEAD program, because of the prosecutors? I actually have a pretty good relationship with the King County prosecutors. I'm going to reach out to them and ask and find out what their response to all this is. This is an absolutely damning report, and you know the worst part is? All of it was predictable. Is anybody out there actually surprised by any of this? Now, here's the question. You got to wonder if anything's going to change. And the only way something like this changes is if the Department of Justice says we are cutting off all funding for programs like this. How much is actually tied to the Department of Justice? is the Department of Justice going to start prosecuting people for fraud? And then it becomes a political thing. Oh, it's Trump. Oh, it's his administration, and they're just going after Democrats. No. Millions of dollars are going out into our communities to organizations like LEAD to make the problem worse, infinitely worse. None of these problems need to be happening. You don't need this program to exist. I think that Eric Zimmerman was kind in saying if you wanted to use them for homelessness or housing, maybe, I guess. That was the nicest thing he could say about this because the entire program is an absolute disaster. In fact, I think I will reach out to some friends in the White House this evening after the show and ask them if they've happened to see this report from the Washington Policy Center. And by the way, Washington Policy Center respected on both sides of the aisle because they follow the data. They follow the science. Let's see where this is going to end up. Speaking of following the data, Katie Wilson says she's going to find the person responsible for bungling the city's response to the Bite of Seattle shooting. Have you looked in the mirror? It's reflecting your forehead. Give you all details when we come back. You're listening to the Ari Hoffman Show. So Seattle Mayor Katie Wilson says that there's going to be an after-action report on the bungled response to the Bite of Seattle shooting. Have you looked in the mirror to find the person responsible? Have you looked real hard? I'm sure it's really hard to find that person every morning when you wake up and look in the mirror. It's really, really tough. Now, I'm not saying you didn't have some help. I think our incompetent former police chief was part of the problem. But, Katie, you were a huge problem behind this. And now you're sending out the new police chief, who also seems like he's a bit of a, shall we just say, not the best for the job. Should we just put that out there for a second? So you're saying, oh, by the way, he also still lives in Chicago. So you didn't really solve your problem. You just traded one guy for another with the same issues. And here's something else. Let's just do some quick math for a second here. We covered this story pretty in depth when it was happening. You had multiple guns found at the scene. None of them were the ones used in the shooting. You are missing 2 guns from the shooting. Also, according to the Seattle police, we had a suspect on the loose. Then we had 2 suspects on the loose. Then we might have as many as 3 suspects on the loose, while you have 1 in custody. So it's been 3 weeks now, literally 3 weeks. Do you have any updates for us at all? How about before the after action report, we find out if there are shooters loose in our community? I know, crazy idea. Seattle City Council member Rob Saka was asking these very same questions of our new interim chief, Andre Sales, earlier today.
And I'm just gonna be point blank here and ask you one that is on the minds of many members of the public, and they absolutely deserve to know. Is there a killer on the loose?
Speaking with my detectives this morning, we still have to comb through some video surveillance that was there. I can't say yes or no. There is a possibility, and I think we're getting to the end of that once we get the evidence that we need from our detectives, looking at the video, looking at some social media things. I think we'll have a better response and a better idea if there's actual killer loose on the loose.
That's it. I want to be the police chief. I want to get fired by Katie Wilson. I could do a better job than this guy. 2 guns are missing. Do you think they got packed up by the vendors while they were packing up Bite of Seattle? Ooh, look, a handgun. I'll take it with me. I'll put it in my food truck. Oh, but then, right, you had the whole scene unsecured afterwards. I walked through the crime scene the day after it happened. I literally walked through a crime scene. Never done that before in my life. Usually they're roped off. Usually there's investigators, people snapping pictures, and people taking samples. What, this isn't like CSI? You don't have a giant database of everybody's fingerprints and hair samples and follicles and semen and everything else you can find at a crime scene? Nothing? Okay, maybe that last one here. We didn't really need that for this one. You're missing 2 guns. You now aren't even sure a suspect is on the loose. Dude, I was in the room for that press conference when you said there are multiple suspects, but you didn't want to misidentify anybody. You didn't want a miscarriage of justice. You didn't want somebody being labeled a suspect who had nothing to do with it. How do you go from that to, we're going through lots of videos and we'll find him soon? We'll find him. What kind of Keystone Cops operation is going on in the Seattle Police Department? Seriously, we back the blue 100%, but who is running this show? Anybody? Nobody? Or are we not allowed to arrest them because they're black or something? Is that what it is? Is it a racial thing? Is that why? Because there are tons of people who have theories on who these guys are. Did you investigate them? Did you go through any of the gangs? Oh, wait, we don't have a gang unit anymore. Didn't that get defunded? Right, we don't have a gang unit. Public Safety Chair Bob Kettle is calling for a review of the shooting incident. Yeah, he's in charge of public safety. By the way, he was there for the press conference. He was there right away. He got to Seattle Center right away. Were we waiting on Bob Ferguson? Were we waiting on Pramila Jayapal? Were we waiting on Katie Wilson? Bob Kettle gave us his entire itinerary of that day, as a matter of fact. Laid it all out right there. So, who's going to be held responsible for this? Anybody? Anybody at all. Oh, the person who should be held responsible for this is in charge of the investigation. How do you think that's going to win? How do you think that's going to go down? She's going to be like the Scarecrow in Wizard of Oz. He went that way and pointed both directions. That's how this is going to end. The blind leading the blind around here. I'd be shocked if they ever actually find anybody. Up next, my friends, a take of mine you might be surprised by with the Trump administration's announcement about vaccines and autism. Give you all details when we come back. You're listening to The Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI. I know a lot of people are excited about what RFK Jr. is doing with vaccines. And I'm kind of divided on this. Let me explain why. Do I think we are giving too many vaccines to kids at one time? Absolutely. Do I think we are giving kids vaccines they don't need? Absolutely. For example, I know the amount of vaccines they want to give kids today is infinitely more than even my kids got, and that wasn't that long ago. I know what my kids got was infinitely more than what I got as a kid. Some of that is medical science, for example. Kevin, you know there's now a chickenpox shot? You know, now kids do not go through the rite of passage of getting chickenpox, which all of us did. All of us did in what? Kindergarten, first grade, second grade. Some kids showed up with it. Then half the class went home with it. Now you're all immune to it because you've all had it, but whatever. We all know this. Everybody knows this. There are things like, for example, we now know, I think it was the tetanus shot. That they used to give that to us like every 5 years or something, and now they say, I think you've had X amount, you don't need any more of the tetanus shot. Is that the one I'm talking about?
I don't think so because I'm pushing 50 and I just got my tetanus shot.
Maybe it's 10 years now instead of 5. There's science that evolves. It's something like that. It's like you don't have to worry about it as much as you used to. Science evolves. But we are giving our kids hepatitis. You're worried about the baby having hepatitis. You're worried about the baby having HPV. Yeah, these are things we're not concerned about with the baby. As you get older, discussion to have. As you get older, kids become sexually active, hopefully when they're married, but we know what happens with teenagers and college kids these days. Then there's other things to discuss. Giving them to a baby, that is something I'm not that in favor of, really not. Now,
I mean, if you think about it, it's just to protect, because the more you wait, right? I get where they're coming from with that.
Yeah.
Like, let's just take care of it now.
Yeah.
I kind of understand that idea. Because if you wait too long, you get down the road, something happens, you're going to go, oh, man, I wish I would have, I kind of get that.
I think it's the concern about overloading at one time.
Sure, and I understand that as well.
Right, which these are all things that are reasonable conversations to have. There's one thing, however, and I am not a scientist and I am not a mathematician, and this is something I'm very, very curious about. So the administration seems convinced that this has something to do with autism. Here's what the president said yesterday.
However, this updated recommendation finally aligns the United States with other advanced and developed nations around the world. More importantly, it aligns us with common sense and knowledge. Decades ago, children received only a small fraction of the vaccines required today. In those times, people were much healthier, and of course, the high rates of autism now observed did not exist. So there's a reason for such epidemic rates of autism, and we're going to bring it back to much closer to where it was. Well, we do not know exactly what the cause is with respect to autism. It is essential to our research efforts that we have the very best vaccine recommendations in the entire world. So we're reducing them. We're changing it to visits over a period of a year and a half, so they get 20% of what they would have gotten in one big shot. A big shot like the size of a large glass of something.
Now, mind you, most of that I don't have an issue with. Most of that we're saying we're going to spread them out more, fine. I think that makes most practical sense, and I think anybody who doesn't have Trump derangement syndrome can look at that. But the autism thing raises my eyebrows, and let me tell you why. So far, the science does not say that the vaccines cause autism. However, there is a spike in autism. And we see more kids with autism. Is that diagnosis has improved? Is that our standards for autism have changed? Or is there a new contributing factor? So, for example, what was the big fraud in Minneapolis? What was the big fraud? You remember what it was about? Autism. These families were signing up their kids who didn't have autism to get benefits from this autism funding that was out there, millions of dollars. And what would happen was the organization would get millions of dollars and they would give kickbacks to the families. How did this all get found out? The families asked for more, and the organization refused to actually provide it. They said, no, we're not upping it. And then the government found out about it magically. I wonder how that happened. Now, mind you, this is not a conspiracy theory. There are 5 people who have been charged or are in jail already for this scam. If you had a massive spike of autism fraud in just Minneapolis, in just Minnesota, and we know that these frauds are being perpetrated across the U.S., how accurate is the data you're relying on to say there's been a spike in autism? To me, it seems like cherry picking data. If you think there's fraud, which we know there is, and if you think there's a spike in autism, which we think there is, have we broken down the numbers first? Now, I know there are people who have adverse reactions to vaccines. I'm not talking about COVID. We're not talking about the Fauci stuff right now. We know there are people with adverse reactions to vaccines. We know that is the minority of people. In the hunt for what is causing autism spikes, we should leave no stone unturned. And I don't understand the people who go, it's not the vaccines, don't even study it. That makes no sense to me. There's nothing wrong with looking at it and saying maybe we're doing them too close together. Maybe we're doing too many at one time. Maybe a kid doesn't need all of them. Maybe this doesn't mix with this. If you have this in your genetics, we don't know all that. We really don't. So I have no problem studying it. But have you actually analyzed the data about the autism fraud that we have seen across the country and how that may have influenced the autism spike? I'm actually going to reach out to HHS and see if I can get RFK Secretary Kennedy on the show, because I'm kind of curious about this. It's not a confrontational thing. I'm just curious about if they've looked at that data. If all this fraud is so bad, which we know it is, we know the fraud is so bad, is that screwing up your autism numbers? Look, I see more kids in my community who have autism than before, but would it have just been before, that's the kid with problems. That's the kid with problems. Send him to the learning center. Is that what we're talking about? Or is it a real spike? And I'm not discounting people who have a real spike, who have kids with autism, any of that. I would want to know. I want to know where that's actually coming from. I'm just concerned we're not factoring in this factor of the fraud here, which are thousands of kids lying about having autism or their parents lying about having autism. Has that been factored into the equation? I'm going to reach out to HHS after the show today. Up next, however, my friends, something else that there's no empirical data for, a trans refugee crisis here in Seattle. Seattle City Council right now, as we speak, is voting on the latest grift. We'll tell you all about it when we come back. You're listening to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI. We're in the dog days of summer, which always makes me sad. Whenever Seafair is over, I always feel like summer's mostly done. I know you got a whole nother month left, but for me, that's always the symbol that summer's coming to an end, and that's when I got to start worrying about school stuff for the kids, whenever Seafair is over. But I remember at the beginning of the summer, we were hearing all these stories about a trans refugee crisis. And I said to myself, have you seen a larger number of trans people around Seattle? No. And I go to a lot of Starbucks. Now, mind you, there's not a lot of Starbucks near our office anymore, but there used to be at the time. So, am I seeing a big increase? No. Is anybody seeing a big increase? No. Are they coming in for the World Cup or something? No. And I very quickly realized this was the latest grift to get money. The way it works in Seattle is you claim there's a problem without providing any evidence whatsoever or evidence that could be easily debunked, like the LEAD program, as we discussed earlier. And then you say to the Seattle City Council, oh, please help us, Seattle City Council. You're our only hope. That's what happens. And then the Seattle City Council gives you money. I was shocked when former Seattle City Council President Sarah Nelson previously said no to groups of illegal aliens who were demanding money for housing, and then they caved and gave them the money and did that anyway. Remember when they came and protested at City Hall? Remember when a whole bunch of them were arrested at City Hall? Remember when they occupied the tennis courts of Garfield High School and said they wouldn't leave until they got funding for the place to stay in Kent? Okay, if you're staying in Kent, go bother the Kent City Council. What are you coming to Seattle for? And this is also one of the ways that the Seattle City Council has managed to rank up hundreds of millions of dollars of a budget deficit. So what's happening now? And I wrote an op-ed about this for the New York Post at the time. I literally called out this grift, saying this transgender refugee crisis is a grift. This op-ed I wrote for the New York Post was published May 28th, 2026. That's a couple months ago. In fact, if you want to see how prophetic I was, text the word POST to 206-421-5757. That's POST to 206-421-5757. I will send you this article that called out literally everything that's happening right now. As we speak at Seattle City Hall, the Seattle City Council is hearing public comment and testimony on the trans refugee crisis because they are considering spending $300,000 of your taxpayer money on a thing that does not exist. If it does exist, there is no evidence to show it exists. But magically, there's some nonprofit out there that says if you give us $300,000, we will help solve the trans refugee crisis. Councilmember Alexis Mercedes Rink's committee about this decided to move it forward to the Seattle City Council. This is what the previous testimony on this subject was like.
QIA individuals with essential needs, including most namely support with emergency shelter, housing, food access, employment support, and more. So while this is one-time funding, I recognize it is not enough to address the full need, but I believe this is a start and signals our commitment that the city of Seattle will remain a welcoming city to the queer and trans community.
Council members, I want to impress upon you the seriousness of the crisis transgender people are facing in this country.
Okay, it's hard to take you seriously when you're clearly a dude in a dress, but okay, continue.
If I were in Idaho right now, I would be in prison for using the bathroom as a trans woman.
What is this craziness they're spewing?
This is an offense which can be punished with a sentence up to life.
What? I don't even know where to go. I don't even know where to go with this. Sure. Let's go with your narrative.
This is a genocide.
I'm here as a swarm of bees because trans people
Oh, lady's dressed as a bee. She's literally dressed as a bee. This is who's testifying.
are pollinators of political issues. Dedicating a section of the budget to funding Seattle LGBTQA community will create economic stability. What we need, we are demanding. Because if you do not give it to us, we will vote you out. And vote someone better in.
Trans people are fleeing by the tens of thousands to Washington and Seattle because we are being...
Tens of thousands. I don't see tens of thousands of Starbucks baristas, do you?
Being systematically exterminated in states like
Exterminated! Systematically exterminated.
Idaho.
Do you want a more severe housing crisis? Do you want trans people to get pushed into survival sex work? Because discrimination is already here. It's not going anywhere, and neither are trans people. Fund housing services for trans people, or the housing crisis will get worse.
The amount of trans people here that are coming here with nothing to nowhere to live, they're living in their cars, they're struggling every single day. They're the most vulnerable people on the entire country, like in the country right now, as far as no one caring.
You are either going to fund services for us, or you're going to pay overtime to the cops to evict us. Either way, the money is already spent.
I'm here in favor of increased budget allocation towards trans refugees. In the trans community in Seattle, I am constantly meeting new people who have recently moved here to flee red state repression.
Stop rejecting us.
Oh, that's my favorite. Another dude in a dress.
Mayor Wilson, and I would like to say, President Hollingsworth, that in Mayor Wilson's last term, let's stand up against her and let's help support our rights.
Katie Wilson was right in rejecting this the first time and not forming a committee to study it. She was actually right about that. I'm shocked. But now the Seattle City Council is entertaining this insanity with no evidence whatsoever? Just watch $300,000 going to waste today. We'll bring you the vote when we have it. Up next, my friends, your chance to take the trip or keep the cash. Give you all details on our contest when we come back. You're listening to The Ari Hoffman Show. Welcome to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI, your home for the politically homeless, streaming live at KVI.com and the KVI app. Coming up this hour on the most dangerous show on the airwaves, creepy Chris Rakedahl comes out in favor of the DSA platform. I'm not sure he's actually read it because I'm not sure he actually knows how to read. Also, Jewish Democrat officials are now afraid to go to their own convention. Things have gotten so bad. But before we get to any of that, my friends, it is your chance to take the trip or keep the cash. That's right, my friends. We are giving away a trip to Hawaii or $3,000 in cold, hard cash during our final week of the competition. So here's what you have to do. You text the word I give you to the number I give you, and you'll be entered for your chance to win a trip to Hawaii or $3,000 in cold, hard cash. Today's word is surf, as in you can look at the surf. You can use a surfboard. The board is not part of the word. But the word surf, text the word surf, S-U-R-F, to 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757 for your chance to win. Thank you to our in-house Pink Floyd cover band for showing up for our final week of the contest. I do appreciate it. Looks like a lot of you had a lot of comments on the autism thing. And I understand it. I understand it 1,000% that people have questions on it. Like this one here from Becky. Regarding the autism epidemic going on, my kids are in their late 30s, and this has been going on since they were little. I agree. I don't have any proof, of course, but I'm suspicious of all vaccines. I remember watching specials many years ago about kids getting certain shots, and they were probably 6 months old to a year old, and autism started popping up after they received those shots. If I had a kid today, I probably would not let them receive all those shots. And that's what we're talking about here. What we're talking about is kids today are getting a lot more shots than we got. They're getting a lot more shots than our parents got. And we're not saying people don't get shots, but why the spike in the autism? Now, my only question was, have you calculated in the fraud? Do you know how much fraud there is, especially when people are defrauding the autism funding? That's my question. I am not saying that there aren't things to look into, and I'm not saying we shouldn't investigate this. For some reason, some people on the text line think I was saying that. That wasn't what I was saying. I very, very clearly said we should investigate literally everything. Because what if we find the bombshell stuff like Fauci did? Now, I don't think it's going to be to this extreme. Excuse me, not that Fauci did, that we just exposed with Fauci, and that was yesterday's story. And now we're finding out that, that COVID vaccine, we're seeing some really troubling things in pregnant women. Really, really troubling things. You don't remember how crazy people got over this? They were saying, oh, how dare you question the science if you question the COVID shot? How dare you question it? Remember this? This is 2021. This is a longer segment. This is CNN literally going after a doctor because they didn't like what he was saying. Give a listen.
The Biden administration has come down hard on vaccine misinformation, but one Florida doctor has seemingly gone to great lengths to perpetuate it. 360's Randy Kay now with the story, the hunt to find him, and the reasons behind his actions.
He is the ultimate super spreader, not of the coronavirus, experts say, but of misinformation about COVID-19. His name is Dr. Joseph Mercola.
It is very likely that most people in America, if not, the vast majority of people in America, have seen misinformation that has originated with this super spreader of lies and misinformation.
That's exactly why the Center for Countering Digital Hate, a nonprofit tracking misinformation about COVID online, put Dr. Mercola, an osteopathic physician, at the top of its disinformation dozen. A list of 12 people, the group says, were the source for sharing 65% of all anti-vaccine messaging on Facebook and Twitter from February 1st through mid-March. We tried to track down Dr. Mercola to ask him about the misinformation he's been posting, like masks may not work, vaccines could be dangerous, and vitamin C and D can prevent or treat the coronavirus. We first tried to find him at his office in Cape Coral, Florida, outside Fort Myers.
I'm looking for Dr. Joseph Mercola. Not here.
Next stop, more than 220 miles away, Ormond Beach, Florida, which Dr. Mercola calls home. We found his house behind a large gate and tried making contact through the security access pad. Later, we spotted Joseph Mercola riding his bicycle. Once he stopped, we thought this was our opening to get some answers as to why he's pushing false claims about masks and the vaccine.
How are you? I'm Randy Kay with CNN. Can we ask you a couple questions? We just want to talk to you about vaccines and what you've been saying about them. Do you feel responsible for people who didn't get vaccinated, possibly got sick and died because of what you told them about the vaccines?
So despite all his bravado online, Mercola suddenly had nothing to say. Though after we emailed him questions, he responded saying, I encourage every person to fully educate themselves to make individual decisions about medical risk-taking. Throughout the pandemic, he's been quite outspoken.
I wanted to go back to this, the reason why the mask may not work.
In his email to us, Mercola challenged any suggestion that he belongs on a disinformation list. Still, by fueling the narrative that vaccines are dangerous, who knows how many of his followers chose to skip the vaccine. What Mercola hasn't made clear to his followers is that according to the CDC, the vaccines are safe and effective. Though he told us via email that over 400,000 adverse events and 6,000 deaths from the COVID-19 vaccines have been filed, a majority of which were filed by medical professionals. To be clear, the FDA has not established a causal link to these deaths.
So CNN went and tracked down a doctor who had a different opinion on masks, on vaccines. That's how crazy. You're spreading misinformation online. Hey, has CNN gone after any of the fraudsters that Nick Shirley found? Any of them at all? Just a little bit? This one here from Robin Lakewood. They sound like Nick Shirley in reverse. Exactly. We went to track him down because he was spreading misinformation. He was spreading disinformation after the bombshell text yesterday from Fauci admitting they were seeing red flags in pregnant women, admitting that there were issues and not telling the public. It's one thing to say we didn't know before. We're telling everybody now. But when women can't have sushi while they're pregnant, when they can't have a glass of wine while they're pregnant, when there's other things they can't do while they're pregnant, let's give them an experimental vaccine and see how that works out. Do you remember what the former CDC director, Rochelle Walensky, was saying about this when she was asked about it?
Is it safe to get vaccinated while you're breastfeeding?
It absolutely is safe to get vaccinated. So I would say if you are thinking about getting vaccinated, there is no bad time to get vaccinated. Get vaccinated while you're thinking about having a baby, before you're thinking about having a baby, while you're pregnant with your baby, or after you've delivered your baby. There is no bad time.
Yeah, remember what Fauci was saying about this too?
Approximately 20,000 pregnant women have been vaccinated with no red flags, as we say. And this is being monitored by the CDC and the FDA.
He was literally saying that while texting other people that they were seeing red flags amongst pregnant women. He was saying that while texting people that they were seeing red flags among pregnant women. People need to go to jail for this. Need to go to jail. One of the saddest tweets I saw in response to this is Bill Ackman. You may not know Bill Ackman. Bill Ackman is the billionaire who was very involved in combating anti-Semitism on college campuses when it was happening in the wake of October 7th. Bill Ackman talked about how his wife had 7 consecutive miscarriages. 7 consecutive miscarriages. Saddest thing I ever saw. Do we know it was because of this? No. But he was talking about the vaccine in regards to it. He was concerned, seeing Fauci's text. People need to go to jail for this. They really, truly do. Because it was, you don't believe the science that Fauci is telling you? We're going to put you on a misinformation list. I went back and looked up my interview with Dr. Robert Malone that got banned from Facebook and YouTube and X and all the other platforms at the time except for Rumble. I went back and looked up that interview. That's the only place I could find it because I think we had a hack a while ago and it took out all our information, all our data. So I found the interview. Guess what we were talking about? Risks to pregnant women. And this is the guy who helped develop the mRNA vaccine. That is literally what we were talking about at the time. We go to the KVI studio line, take a call from Jason in Federal Way. Jason, what's going on?
Hey, Jason here. Yep. Yeah, it's worse than what you're stating about Mercola. I mean, I was listening to him for years before COVID, but right after COVID started, he had a guy on talking about the original spread, and he had a guy on there talking about virus labs and all that good stuff, and then he was debanked. So he was not only tracked down by CNN, but he was debanked. He was lucky he found another bank because he's got business employees and all that good stuff. But yeah, they tried to absolutely destroy him. And I say they, not CNN, but you know what I mean when
Yeah.
they.
Well, look, I can imagine because I got a small taste of that because I got a strike for having Dr. Robert Malone on. And my Facebook page, right when I got a radio show, it didn't recover until like 6 months ago. 6 months ago, my Facebook page started working right again. The amount of restrictions that were on it were absolutely insane. And they didn't want anybody putting, and what were we saying that was so bad? What were we saying? Hey, can we examine the science? I wasn't saying anything like, oh, well, it's going to give you blood clots or anything like that. I said, can we examine what's going on? Because this don't make sense. It's crazy.
Exactly, and that's what informed consent is.
Mm-hmm.
Informed consent is your individual doctor saying the pros and cons of getting whatever, fill in the blank. And nobody even knows what informed consent is. And I mean, that was one of the main issues. And that's what Mercola was stating all along.
Yeah.
Talk to people.
Do you remember this? Okay, so here's the thing. Jason, did you get the shot? I got the shot. Did you get the shot?
Absolutely not. No.
Okay. So I got the shot because I wanted to go visit my son in Israel, and you had to get the shot to travel. Okay? So I didn't get the boosters after that because I realized this thing is no good. So I got the shot. And I'm sitting in the chair, and they said, you have to sit here for 20 minutes. And I said, why do you have to sit here for 20 minutes? And they go, in case you pass out. And I went, excuse me? Wait, what? In case you pass out? I mean, okay, I go to the doctor's office, and I get my other shots, and I get whatever I don't get the flu shot because that one always makes me sick, right? But in case you pass out? What kind of nonsense is that?
Yeah, that's probably the part of the issue is, I mean, we've had local family. I mean, I think we've had one round of shot with 3 of our kids, and this was 20 some years ago. But it's unfortunate the majority of the people just go blindly into something, and you need an event around you, either a personal event or we had a cousin that passed out immediately after getting one of his shots when he was a kid and going into convulsions, and that raised flags. We did our research, and there's some great information out there.
Well, here's the thing.
I
think about this for a second, Jason, because you seem like a health-conscious individual, right?
I'm very healthy, yep.
Right. We tell pregnant women, hey, try not to get the flu. Because if you get the flu, you know what? It's not great for the pregnancy. It's not great for the baby. And we know that when you get the flu shot, it kind of gives you the flu. So there's some split people about whether or not you should get that sucker. And now we know how many people that shot knocked for a loop. Even me, when I had the thing, I felt like I had COVID all over again. So we're going to say we're going to give you COVID? Yeah, it was crazy, the stuff we did. Appreciate the call. Appreciate you being part of the show. You want to be part of the show, give us a call or text at 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757. We go back to the KVI studio line. Take a call from Sharon in Kirkland. Sharon, what's going on?
Hi, Ari. So nice to get on your line. I love you.
Thank you.
Ari, stop talking about jail time, please. This goes far beyond that. This man has murdered more than one. He has destroyed businesses. He has lied. This man needs much more than jail time, and you know what I'm saying.
Well, I'll tell you this, Sharon, is like on the text line right now, a lot of people are saying they don't think jail time is enough for him. And I'll say this right now, okay, is that we don't know the full extent of what he did yet. We really don't. We have little bits and pieces, and Rand Paul and Senator Johnson's committee is putting out more and more. We don't know everything yet. We didn't know this pregnancy thing a week ago. We didn't know it until yesterday. That's when we found out about this. I am wondering how much more is out there on Fauci. Appreciate the call. Appreciate the kind words. Appreciate you being part of the show. You want to be part of the show, you give us a call or a text at 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757. People are very passionate about this issue. Let's remember what he did to kids in schools. Let's remember how it was the teachers' unions pushing for those schools to remain closed and how the Biden administration went along with it because that's what Dr. Jill, who was one of the champions of one of those schools, did. Let's remember all the businesses they shut down. How much depression, how much suicide, how much substance abuse did people turn to when their businesses, when their jobs were lost? It was astronomical. I think I did a public disclosure request back in 2021 or 2022, trying to find out how many businesses closed in Washington during COVID as a result of COVID. And then I compared it to previous years. The numbers were through the roof, absolutely through the roof. It was crazy. And yet nobody's held accountable for this. Nobody held responsible for this. That, I think, is the greatest injustice, because it wasn't just Fauci. There were a lot of people doing this. There were a lot of people who were out there saying, you have to do this, and we know the science and how. Jay Inslee. What did he call us all? Trump-supporting bioreactor hazards? You remember that nonsense? How many people were like him? Cuomo, Gretchen Whitmer, Gavin Newsom. Ron DeSantis is the one who created his own scientific council. And he said, we're going to do this thing. We're going to go study it. We're going to go see what's going on. We're going to actually follow the science. Why did everything we know about science get chucked out the window during COVID? For example, if you get the disease, you have natural immunity to it. And that's better than any vaccine whatsoever. For having this discussion right now, back in the day, my podcast would have been censored. My social media would have been censored for even having this discussion. And it happened many, many times once we started having a live stream with the video. Happened many times on Facebook, happened many times on X before Elon Musk bought it, happened on YouTube all the time. The amount of followers, because I've been banned from YouTube so many times, it almost makes it not worth me having YouTube, because the censorship was so insane. I got a strike for having President Trump on. Because why? Because he talked about the things he usually talks about, like voter fraud and such. But for having the president of the United States on my show, airing his opinion, I got a strike and I got the thing taken down. That interview only exists now over on Rumble. I'm seriously thinking about moving all my video stuff to Rumble. I mean, we stream the show there every day. We stream it on YouTube. We stream it on Facebook. We stream it on X. But it seems to me like I should be putting my clips up on Rumble, because they're not going to be taken down over there, whereas YouTube dings me every 5 seconds for something else. I don't remember anywhere in the Constitution where it said, yeah, we have all these amendments, but they don't matter if there's the flu. Yet none of these people are going to see consequences. There are so many people who participated in this. And how about the people who feel like they were scammed because of people like Anthony Fauci? Absolutely crazy. Absolutely crazy. It just kind of feels like there's no justice for the people who made so many people's lives a living hell. Speaking of people who makes people's lives a living hell, creepy Chris Rakedahl is now saying MAGA are fascist, but saying how he supports the DSA platform. Does he know what's in the DSA platform? This is the guy in charge of educating all of our children. Give you the details on what he said when we come back. You're listening to The Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI. August is when teachers start prepping for the school year, right? August? They get July? Maybe. Sure, maybe. If you're a teacher, you text me and let me know when you start prepping for the school year. But when I used to run youth programming, August is when I started getting back in the swing of things. July, I took time off. June, I took time off. But August is when I started planning for the following year. Well, what's creepy Chris Rakedahl, the superintendent of public instruction here in Washington, doing with his time to prepare for the school year? Talking about how MAGA is fascist and how much he loves the DSA. I kid you not, this is what he posted to Facebook earlier today. And this person is in charge of the education of all the public school kids here in Washington State. Quote, I don't remember the media in 2016 wondering whether the fascist MAGA wing of the GOP would destroy that entire party. But they sure spend a lot of time perseverating, I don't know this word, on the idea that the DSA will destroy the Democratic Party. MAGA and DSA are not two opposite ends of a political spectrum. You're right about that. They are most definitely not. The former wants to take away civil rights. What? Hand the economy over to Okay, dude, do you even know what you're saying? And install a theocracy. The DSA wants affordable housing, a fair tax code, and an accessible education. Really? You think that's what they want? Here's DSA co-chair. DSA co-chair Megan Romer was on Fox News the other day. The DSA co-chair was on Fox News, and they went through the entire crazy party platform with her, item for item. Do you guys believe in abolishing the Senate? Do you guys believe in defunding the police? Do you guys believe in abolishing prisons? Do you guys believe that government or public ownership should have most large corporations? Do you believe you should prosecute U.S. and Israeli leaders? Do you believe you should replace the presidency and the Supreme Court? When they had on DSA co-chair Megan Romer on Fox News, this is what she said when asked about all that.
So we're going to put up on the screen a few of the things that are part of your platform, and I want to ask you, just give me sort of a true or false on these. Abolish the Senate. True. Okay. Replace the presidency and Supreme Court as we now know them. Yep. Abolish ICE. Absolutely. Abolish borders and give amnesty to anyone currently in the U.S. illegally. As a long-term plan, yep. Defund the Pentagon. Absolutely. Abolish prisons, at least in large part. Yeah, again, that as part of a long-term program, yeah. Okay, so no prisons. Government or public ownership of most large corporations. Yeah, absolutely. You
hear anything about education in there? By the way, what you don't see is Fox was scrolling the platform from their website on the side. They were scrolling the... You hear anything about... Hang on, what's he got here? Affordable housing, a fair tax code, and accessible education. You hear anything about that? Oh, Ari, that's Fox News. For sure they censored it. That's Fox News. Okay. How about Bill Maher? Anybody going to claim Bill Maher, who hates Donald Trump, is a member of MAGA? Anybody? Here's Bill Maher reading the platform to his audience.
And finally, new rule, Donald Trump has told 1 trillion lies, but when he says the Democratic Socialists of America are actually communist, that's not one of them. And it's not hard to prove it, just by quoting the DSA and their candidates. J.D. Vance was on the show, and I told him that if the Democratic Party keeps going in the direction of the DSA, my vote was in play. And all I heard all vacation was, oh my God, you're a Republican now. No, that's not what I said. I said in play. And here's why. Because not a week goes by where I don't read about some newly chosen, exciting new face in the Democratic Party. And then when that face opens its mouth, the Communist Manifesto or some other crazy comes out. Again, let's just read the quotes. The DSA platform says you work as much as you are able and no more than needed. If that was any closer to Karl Marx's dictum, from each according to his abilities to each according to his needs, they'd be sued for plagiarism. New York Mayor Mondani once tweeted Karl Marx's words exactly. They're not trying to hide it. Their most popular influencer, Hassan Piker, thinks communism is so groovy. He laments the fall of the two of the most murderous regimes in history, the Soviet Union and Chairman Mao's China. Mondani's aide, his top aide, Sia Weaver, said, if you don't believe in the government's sacred right to seize property, it's over, and impoverish the white middle class. What? That's a goal? You know you're supposed to scare people into voting for you, right? One of the new soon-to-be Democratic congresspeople, Darlisia Chevalier, supports seizing all properties from landlords and said, seize the means of production. Mondani has said the end goal is seizing the means of production. I think they want to seize the means of production. Now, maybe you missed that in school or missed school altogether, but that's communism. Now the coalition within the DSA, called the Marxist Unity Group, is in ascendance, and I must take them at their word when their words include, our commitment is to the long-term struggle for a fully liberated, classless society, in a word, communism. What do they have to do? Tweet out, elect more communists? Oh yeah, Sia Weaver did that. Yes. Good, I'm glad you're shocked. People got to realize this is going on.
They were shocked. Bill Maher's audience. That's usually a more left-leaning audience. Chris Rakedahl added the Reagan-Gingrich messaging machine was so effective that the massive shift to the right in this country has a lot of people believing that FDR-like Democrats today are leftists. Chris, you need to study up on your history. FDR, socialist. Go back and double check that. Number two, Reagan and Gingrich. People who support Reagan and Gingrich are now seen as neocons. So much so that the left talks about how much they love Ronald Reagan now. And by that, I mean the liberal left. Chris, he says we'll need another political realignment to recalibrate American politics and policy for the good of the country. Hang on tight. 2026 is a baby step to 2028. And stop vilifying those who seek an expansion of the public good. You mean communism? These folks are not communists. They would merely have been regular old Democrats from 1914 to 1980. No. It's media construction that has changed, not the core values of traditional Democrats. I reached out to OSPI, and I asked them for a statement. Does he stand by all this? You know what they said to me? I just got this back while the Bill Maher clip was playing. I just got this back, Kevin. Hi, Ari. Says the post was made on the superintendent's personal social media account. It isn't something I will speak to from this office. You are welcome to reach out to him via his campaign if you like. Chris Rakedahl just got reelected. What campaign? What campaign are we talking about? Literally just got reelected last year. What campaign? I wrote back because I'm me. He isn't a different person or have an alter ego because it is a different account. The statement is still something the superintendent of public instruction of Washington State actually said. I hate that crap. I hate that. Oh, he put it out from a different account, so it's not him. It's still him. What, Chris Rakedahl takes off his glasses and turns into communist man? No, it's the same guy who's in charge of public instruction here in Washington who doesn't want to be accountable to you and is now pushing this insanity on social media. Speaking of insane, by the way, we now have the data that actually backs up that none of these diversion programs actually work. The man who did the study joins us when we come back to tell us exactly how bad it is. We'll give you all the details. Up next, you're listening to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI. Thank you to our friends over at Renewal by Andersen for sponsoring today's Newsmaker Spotlight, Western Washington windows and doors for every home. Well, normally we don't have guests back this quickly. Normally, I don't know, once a month or something like that. To have one back literally 3 days after we had him the first time is kind of unheard of around here. I think for breaking news, we one time had it literally back to back, but there is such a bombshell report that just came out regarding the Law Enforcement Assisted Diversion Program, the LEAD program, which is basically responsible for the revolving door justice system we have here in Seattle. The worst part is this diversion program has been copied and basically Xeroxed and used across the country to create these revolving door justice programs across the U.S., and it turns out it may have all been based on completely fraudulent data. Joining us now to discuss on the KVI studio line, the policy director for Washington Policy Center's Public Safety Solutions, Eric Zimmerman. Thank you so much for being back with us today.
All right, thank you. You know, I think there's probably enough in Washington that we could meet every 3 days, and we'd always have something new to talk about. But that's a good part of my job is find it and talk about it.
Well, I'll tell you, is breaking down this report. So you guys sent me a copy of this in advance before you released it, and I still haven't finished reading every single nuance of it. There's footnotes I haven't gone through yet. But I poured over this thing because for years, literally for years, I've been calling out the LEAD program and how it doesn't work and how they don't have the data and how they haven't provided any of this. And it turns out you're a numbers guy and you found the exact same thing.
Well, you know, Ari, I was some folks in Seattle's government asked me to take a look at stuff like this, and I was in a Seattle City Council meeting looking at the presentation, and the presentation said, "Hey, we reduce arrests by 58%." And right away, in my professional practice for 20 years, working on large government programs around the world, I was like, "There's no way. That's not possible. You cannot get complex groups of people to change that much that quickly." And from there, I looked at the original research. I saw what had happened. And it's true. If you look at the internet, pretty much the only thing the internet knows about LEAD is the non-factual things, where from the first press release onwards, people talking about LEAD did not understand what the research said. And even if you look at what the research says, it's not all that persuasive. There was a lot of problems with the research, but the biggest problem is the research was talking about fairly minor changes happening, like a 58% change in odds. But that somehow got mistranslated into a 58% reduction in crime. And if you go through employment, you go through housing, you go through felony rates, all of the things that you could talk about for what we're looking to change and people who are being diverted from jail, all of those numbers got it wrong. And it's been getting it wrong for 11 years. It's gone to more than 20 states. It's gone into federal appropriations. There's branches of academia that have now been built on this, and a lot of follow-up studies that are incorrectly citing what they think happened in LEAD because of the PR materials or because of what the internet says, but almost none of them have cited the original research and correctly understood. It showed a small change, and we built a national program on it.
Now, this is the part I found most entertaining. This might be in a little bit in the weeds for our listeners, is that their math is wrong. Now, I don't pretend to be a math guy. I have guys like you on here to explain the math to me, but basically, all their math is wrong, and you are more likely to die and of a drug overdose or on the streets or because of crime than actually be unemployed or be employed and go back to leading a productive life as a citizen. What else is in this report?
And this is one of the biggest problems I had with it. I've done a lot of work in economic development and job growth projects around the world. And there was a claim in there in the study itself and the research that said that people were 46% more likely to be on the employment spectrum. Now, let's acknowledge that's kind of inventing a term, but it implies employment, right? It implies that people are getting jobs. And if you look at the number, out of 163 people who are unemployed in the LEAD group when they entered the study, 163 people unemployed, 3 people got jobs. And so 3 out of 163, that's not 46%. But if you're talking about odds, something kind of obscure and statistical like that, you can say that the odds changed by 46%. Or the likelihood changed by 46%. But if you start with a very small number and you're growing a little bit to another small number, that's not very big of a difference. And I was making the point, if they wanted to brag about the 3 people that got jobs and call that 46% increased attainment of employability or being on the employment spectrum, then why don't you talk about the 9 people who died? Because that's 3 times as many as 3, and 9 people died during the course of the study. And it's a small number either way. 9 is small, 3 is small, but 9 is bigger than 3, and they didn't talk about the 9 who died.
Now, something else here, and we're talking with Eric Zimmerman from the Washington Policy Center about this new LEAD study that's absolutely damning, showing how the program doesn't work and their math was wrong the whole time. What was interesting to me was it shows if you go to prison, you're actually more likely to become a productive member of society rather than if you go through the LEAD program. And that's the entire basis of this thing existing, claiming that prison doesn't work at all and we're better off diverting these people.
Yeah, and that's something that Bureau of Labor Statistics looked at in 2019, because there's been a lot of desire in the federal government and state governments to understand, okay, well, what really does happen to people when they come out of prison? Let's acknowledge something went wrong before they went into prison, which is why they ended up in prison. And when they come out of prison, what's going to happen next? And indeed, yeah, about a third of men who were there longer than 6 months had a job in the first week. About half of men had a job within the first 10 weeks. And contrast that with LEAD. You're in there for, on average, I think about a year and a half for the average participant in LEAD during this study, and almost nobody got jobs, which says to me behavior didn't change. And the thing that we want to see, whether it's in prison, whether it's outside prison, we want to see people who are in crisis, people who are at risk, having behavior change necessary to take them out of crisis. And maybe sometimes that's surrounding them with support. I get that. There's a role for that. But you got to also see the change inside someone. And if all you saw was 3 people getting jobs, that could just be a recording error by somebody who was their case manager. There might have been 0 jobs, or that might have been 3 people who just were surrounded by family and friends that helped drag them out of the crisis they were in and get them into employment. But why would we then say that LEAD had a 46% increased likelihood of being on the employment spectrum when that is not true at all? And in any way you want to describe it, 3 people getting jobs is not a sign of increased employment.
No, clearly not. In the last few minutes we have with Eric Zimmerman, who's the policy director, Public Safety Solutions at the Washington Policy Center. Now, because this thing has been rolled out nationally and because this thing is not working nationally, seems to be, are you talking to anybody in the federal government? Does anybody in the federal government take an interest in this and possibly doing something? How about the other states that rolled this thing out? I see some blue states. I see some red states. I see some blue cities and red states. What's going on nationally because of this?
I think that's a conversation we need to have, Ari, because if you say, look, we're going to make really big changes to how we do criminal justice, and here's the proof, the evidence as to why we should make that change. And then you go and change a bunch of places and you look back and you say, the proof that we were talking about, well, it wasn't really what we said it was. That's a very big problem. It's a big problem for the federal government when you do congressional appropriations. It's a big problem for all of the municipalities and all the states that voted on this. When people went to a legislature or city council, said, hey, do things differently. We have proof to you that things will be better if you do things differently. Vote on it. Give us budget. So they do that. They vote on it. They give you budget on the condition of what you told them. You told them you've got a really effective program. You told them that you're doing things really miraculously well. They trust you that that's the case. They vote on it. They make the change. They give you budget. They start doing things differently. If you rewind now and say, folks, actually, we got it wrong. It turns out that the thing we were talking about wasn't all that effective after all. This is a massive, massive problem in federal, state, local governments everywhere.
Eric Zimmerman, Policy Director of Public Safety Solutions at the Washington Policy Center. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you so much for doing the work on this, because this is something I've been screaming from the rooftops literally since 2018. I've been yelling about this, and I'm glad somebody like you who actually does math, unlike me, who my math skills are rather limited, actually looked into this and is holding these guys accountable. Really do appreciate it.
Thank you, Ari. Really, always a pleasure to be here.
We love having you. We got a whole lot more to discuss as the show continues. You're listening to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI. Welcome back to the Ari Hoffman Show. Just a reminder to head on over to KVI.com. Not only can you see articles before we talk about them on air, but also you can sign up to become a KVI insider. That way you get all the details on contests, events, and so much more. That's all over at KVI.com. Well, we spoke a few months ago, actually it was the beginning of July, about the convention that the Democrats had at the end of June about their party platform. And it was one of the craziest, most anti-Semitic things that we've ever seen. And we reached out, and it turns out a lot of Jews don't go to the Democrat Party convention anymore here in Washington because it's gotten so bad. It's not just here in Washington. It's apparently in Michigan where Al-Sayed, Abdul Rahman Mohammed El-Sayed, yes, that's actually his name. You know, the guy who supports terrorism, sounds like he's got the name to go with it. This guy is so bad, and the party's so bad, that now the state attorney general does not feel confident going to her own party's convention. That's how bad it's gotten. Here's Michigan Democrat Dana Nessel talking about it.
You recently made the decision to skip the Michigan Democratic nominating convention. It'll happen this month. You said so due to safety concerns and anti-Semitic harassment. What specifically have you experienced, and what concern did you have about attending the Democratic Party nomination contest?
Well, look, myself and other Jewish electeds are subjected to a barrage of anti-Semitic threats. And that's been happening literally since my first day in office in 2019, long before October 7th. But in addition to that, you know, what we've seen in the Democratic Party as of late in here in Michigan is that we're not seeing the same kind of civil discourse that we used to be able to have, and the ability to have a diversity of ideas and opinions that are, you know, respected.
Is your party doing enough to address those concerns, Madam Attorney General?
Yeah, I would say absolutely they're not. And I would just point to the example that we have 5 members of the Democratic Party who have been charged with anti-Semitic acts of violence, of vandalism and harassment and threats to other Democratic officials, some of whom are Jewish, and including an attack on the Jewish Federation of Detroit. So those people are still permitted to come to the convention. And it's just baffling to me that while these charges are pending, they're going to be allowed to be there despite, these credible charges against them. So I think that there's a lot that we could do. We could enforce a code of conduct that says that, again, you can't chase people around the convention yelling at them. It's not appropriate to boo people off the stage, even if it's a candidate whose ideas you don't support. You know, we should all have the opportunity to be heard, if we are members of the party.
Okay, that's how bad it is. Their own attorney general, so much for the party of tolerance, right? Here's Mallory Ann McMorrow, who has served in the Michigan Senate since January 2019, when she got asked, is it really that bad?
So one of Michigan's top leaders, your attorney general, Dana Nessel, she's a Democrat. She also is Jewish. She had this to say recently about whether she would feel welcome attending the top Democratic gathering in your state. Let's watch. We'll talk about it. Oh, it's a full screen. Excuse me. I feel like my presence isn't going to be welcome, she said. I don't want to get chased around. I don't want to get harassed. I don't want to get yelled and screamed at. I don't want to get booed off the stage, irrespective of what I'm saying. And I believe that if I go, that's what will happen, because it's been happening to me. This is her talking about the convention. And, you know, I saw a clip where she said she doesn't feel like it's because people care that she's a woman or care that she's gay, but they care that she's Jewish. Are Jews no longer welcome in the Democratic Party in Michigan?
We have seen rising anti-Semitism. And I even said at our last convention, my husband, who is Jewish, I'm in an interfaith marriage, an anti-Semitic slur was screamed in his face when he was with my 5-year-old daughter. We have some healing to do here.
Oh, some healing! Some healing to do here. Yeah, that'll make everything right. Have some healing to do here. You kidding me? Democrat Party you knew is done, my friends. Walk away. Don't walk away. Run away while you can. Final hour free-for-all coming up next. You're listening to The Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI. Welcome to the Ari Hoffman Show's final hour free for all. Your calls, your texts, your thoughts, your stories, streaming live at KVI.com and the KVI app. Coming up this hour on the most dangerous show on the airwaves, Seattle City Council, as we speak, is debating whether or not to fund $300,000 to address a non-existent trans refugee crisis. We'll bring you the results of the vote as soon as we have them. But the Seattle City Council is also considering other things today. Let's see, how long have we had the RV problem here in Seattle? You know what it used to be with the RVs? It used to be somebody worked in the industrial district and lived somewhere else, like Grays Harbor or Bremerton or something, and they had an RV. And what would happen was they would drive their RV to the yard where they worked. They would stay there Monday through Thursday nights in the RV, and then when they were done, they would go home. How do I know this? My office used to be in the industrial district. For 18 years it was there. Then you started seeing a few things happen. One, truckers started getting replaced by Somalian truckers. And the truckers that generally before kind of respected where you parked, where you didn't. Now the Somalian truckers didn't care, and they're doing oil changes in the middle of the street and dumping the oil on the road. Seriously, saw junk like that all the time. I remember I was sitting in my office one time, and all of a sudden, the whole building starts to shake, literally the whole building. And I think it's an earthquake. And half of me is going, this is really cool. I've never been in an earthquake before. The other half of me is going, run out of the building right now. I ran out of the building, and it wasn't an earthquake. These Somalian truckers were building off permits a new garage for the trucks right next to my building, and in digging, they were hitting the foundation of my building. Still haven't experienced a real earthquake yet. Not that I'm asking for it. I'm fine. Not asking for it. But things started changing. Then you started noticing the homeless move in into those broken down, dilapidated RVs. And the people who used to commute for work weren't doing it anymore because it became too dangerous. So those RVs were gone. And in their place were the drug dealers and the chop shops and everything else we know that goes on in these RVs. I started seeing this in 2015, 2016, maybe earlier, maybe 2014 is when this really started to change. So you've had this problem for over a decade. It's nothing new. This has been something that's been going on for a long, long time. Well, now today, the Seattle City Council is considering new permits. RVs and travel trailers without a new city permit would be limited to 2 hours of parking on Seattle streets or alleys under a sweeping package of legislation unveiled by the Seattle City Council member Dan Strauss. The proposed rules would also prohibit unpermitted motorhomes and travel trailers from parking on city streets between midnight and 6 a.m. Now, this is all well and good, but who's going to enforce it? You don't have enough police officers, meter maids. Here's something else. Are you going to be able to collect fines from the unpermitted? You know what this is going to result in, Kevin? It's going to result in those people who have the permitted motorhomes now having to pay a fee while being parked next to the homeless RVs. Why can't you just say, no RV parking and we're going to tow you otherwise, except if you have this permit? Vehicles violating the restrictions could ultimately be impounded or without prior notice. Good. The changes are not immediate. The legislation calls for new restrictions to take effect in 2027, with enforcement beginning of July of that year. So for another year, nothing's going to happen. Now, mind you, you got another problem. And this is something Dan Strauss doesn't know because he's too busy sitting in his office in City Hall. The towing companies don't want to tow these things anymore because they sit in the yard and they have no way to get rid of these things. Unless you have these so-called ranchers come on out, and what do? They buy the RVs for pennies on a dollar, then lease them out to homeless people. So what do they care if a thing they bought for $25 or $100 is towed away again? They'll just buy it again. Okay. Now, under the proposal, people living in motorhomes or travel trailers who qualify for a vehicle resident assistance permit could avoid the 2-hour limit under certain circumstances. Oh, you mean the homeless? So all this is going to do is charge the people who have legit reasons for being in RVs. That's it. Typical Seattle City Council. Eligibility would be limited, they claim. The draft legislation calls for Human Services Department to conduct a one-time census of people or vehicles already on Seattle streets. Only people or vehicles identified through that census would be eligible to apply for the permit. So the people on the streets you're trying to get rid of in the RVs, if they are on the streets now, they can qualify for basically a permit to be homeless, and now you can't get rid of them. The legislation says the city intends to provide as many as 3 warnings. 3 warnings from the city of Seattle. Ooh, oh no. Before enforcement. You think this thing has any chance of working whatsoever? No. Of course it doesn't. You know what actually works? Enforcing the law. If only there was a city where they brought in a whole bunch of law enforcement, maybe the National Guard, cleaned out the homeless, offered them services, or said, get out, that maybe we could try this out in and see how it worked out. Well, guess what? There is. It's called Washington, D.C. According to Fox News, the Make D.C. Safe and Beautiful Task Force will mark its first anniversary Tuesday after making more than 16,000 arrests since its launch. Fox News Digital has learned, as the Trump administration points to the results of its sweeping crackdown on violent crime in the nation's capital. Amazing. The task force launched in August 11, 2025, bringing federal, state, and local law enforcement together after Trump declared a crime emergency in Washington, D.C. Trump also deployed National Guard troops, drawing criticism from Democratic officials. I was in D.C. for the 4th of July. I was there for the week before. Let me tell you what I saw while I was there. Yeah, National Guard were all over the place. And this is before fireworks, and this is before anything else. You know how helpful they were with directions? You know how nice they were with that kind of stuff? They were everywhere, and they were helpful. Very helpful, very nice. I felt safe. Then, once you clean out the riffraff, you can get all the fountains working, you can clean up all the monuments, and that's exactly what they did. The operation has led to the arrest of 35 homicide suspects, more than 100 known gang members, along with 3,200 narcotics arrests, nearly 2,000 illegal guns being seized. Democrats like that, right? And 25 missing children located and returned home. Oh, what a terrible program. What an awful program. We should never do that again. The operation followed the June 2025 killing of 21-year-old congressional intern Eric Tarpinian and a series of high-profile violent crimes, including the beating of a former DOJ staffer and the shooting death of a 14-year-old boy in a case involving MS-13 gang members. Last year, Trump increased the federal law enforcement presence in Washington, D.C., deploying hundreds of federal agents and National Guard troops to the streets to combat crime. Now, the No Kings protesters got all mad about this. Mayor Muriel Bowser previously slammed Trump for saying, and I wonder what she says now, look how safe my city is. And we did that through my efforts. No, lady. No, you didn't. Don't forget the backlash to the National Guard. Even had 2 National Guardsmen shot, one of them killed. But it worked. It worked. Wouldn't it be nice to do something like that here? Well, it turns out more than $8 million in federal DOJ funding is coming to Washington State, paying for police drones, pursuit-stopping technology, school resource officers, which means cops in the schools, tactical medical kits, investigative equipment, and the return of Bellingham's motorcycle traffic unit. The DOJ's Office of Justice Programs awarded the burn grants last month to Washington State and 10 cities and counties. The 2 largest grants, totaling nearly $6.5 million, are going to the Washington State Department of Commerce, which will distribute the money to cities, counties, and nonprofit organizations to community safety programs. The largest local award, Seattle Police and surrounding jurisdictions, will receive $842,000 for overtime, technology improvements, and other programs and equipments identified by individual jurisdictions. Tacoma and Pierce County will receive $395,000, including money for Tacoma's Building Resilience Against Youth Violence and Exploitation, or BRAVE, aimed at reducing young adult violence. The Pierce County Sheriff's Office will use its portion for safety equipment and training. You have a whole bunch of other municipalities which are just getting police equipment. But this one I have here from Tacoma, which is talking about this resilience against youth violence and exploitation, I wonder if this is actually going to work. You know why? We've tried these diversion programs before. They don't work. And as you heard from our friend, Eric Zimmerman, in a previous segment, the LEAD program, the Law Enforcement Assisted Diversion Program, has been lying or really bad at math about their statistics for years. In fact, this program, which diverts criminals, or is supposed to divert criminals, it diverts people with 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 arrests who have no business being diverted. Instead, it shows that in the LEAD program, you are 3 times more likely to die than actually end up rehabilitated with a job. That's how damning this report is. That's how bad this report is. Oh, you mean not enforcing the law is bad? In fact, you know what else it shows? This August 2026 National Retraction Brief offered by Washington Policy Center Public Safety Solutions Policy Director Eric Zimmerman. It says you're better off going to jail, at least in jail. Guess what ends up happening? You end up having to have a job afterwards and probation. In LEAD, no accountability whatsoever. None. Zero. Zilch. According to the 2019 Bureau of Labor Statistics research tracking men after release from at least 6 months of incarceration, that you had the majority of them, over 50%, actually got a job. 33.9% were employed within 1 week of release. 50.3% were employed by week 10. But meanwhile, among the 176 LEAD participants examined for employment outcomes, 91% remained unemployed on average. That's the LEAD program. And yet, we continue to fund this thing. In fact, it's worse than that. This program was rolled out across the country. Los Angeles, D.C., Portland, West Virginia, New Jersey, Maine, North Carolina, New York. You know New York's bail reform program? You remember that disaster from 5-6 years ago, right before COVID? Do you remember this? It was literally right before COVID. I think it was winter of 2019. New York had this idea. We're not going to charge bail anymore. We're just going to release these guys. Guess what they modeled it on? The LEAD program here in Seattle. Do you remember what happened that week? This is before October 7th. There were a whole bunch of anti-Semitic attacks, including a guy with a machete who showed up to a Hanukkah party and started slicing at people. Released. All these anti-Semitic attacks, all these other assaults, you name it, people being released left and right because they were basing it on the falsified data or the fraudulent data from the LEAD program. Well, Eric Zimmerman did a whole deep dive on this and shows either LEAD doesn't know how to do math or they are intentionally lying to get millions of dollars in funding across the country. Now, how do you actually fix something like this where they believe in these diversion programs? You go to the feds and you say, guys, here's the data. It doesn't work. Now, we reached out to the LEAD program with this report from Zimmerman, and we haven't heard back yet. Did I reach out to them last night or this morning? I don't remember, but we reached out to them. And we still haven't heard anything from them. Do you think they're ever going to get back to us on this? My guess is probably a big how about no, because the information is damning. I met with Lisa Dugard back in 2018. I met with her at the LEAD offices, and they were telling me all these sob stories and all these very nice things, lovely, fantastic. And when I said, show me the data, they couldn't produce the data because the data does not exist. Like in that Mean Girls movie, the limit does not exist. The data does not exist to show that releasing criminals time and time and time again actually works. Instead, look at Washington, D.C., where instead you send in more agents, you send in more police, you send in the National Guard. Then not only does your city get safer, but your city gets cleaned up as well. The LEAD program should be completely defunded coast to coast because all it does is release criminals from jail. We go to the KVI studio line, take a call from Ted in Gig Harbor. Ted, what's going on, man?
Ari, I have a question on the subject. Do you know the average life expectancy of a homeless person once they become homeless? Does anybody have that number?
You know, Andrea Suarez is coming to join us later in the show. I will ask her.
Okay, I think if that number was out there, a lot of people would get all cranked up, and then you could compare it with the average life expectancy of a homeless person who gets arrested and into rehab, like in Seattle is dying. That I think it was Providence, Rhode Island. They just decided, well, let's just enforce the law and see what happens. And miracles happened. People got sober and straight, and they were thanking them.
Well, actually, it's an important point you make, Ted, because I believe there is data on drug addiction. I believe there is data showing that when people get arrested, they are more likely to actually go through these programs. But the data that I've seen on drug addiction and overdoses and all that is that the average amount of rehab tries it takes is 7 or 8. That's bad. I mean, that's how hard it is to kick a habit sometimes. There are people who do it in 1. There are people who do it in 2. There are people who do it in 15, 20. There are people who never get clean and sober. So I have to go back and double check this. And Andrea Suarez, when she comes in for our 5:30 interview today, I believe she's coming into the studio, we will ask her because she's one of the people who's been banging this drum for years, literally for years, about how bad this is.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem, Ted. Appreciate the call. Appreciate you being part of the show. You want to be part of the show, you give us a call or a text at 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757. This is a damning report. My bet is I never hear from Lisa Dugard or anybody over at LEAD. Why? Because they don't want the hard questions. If you've been using the same bad data for over a decade to justify your program, you know what that means? You don't have any good data you could actually use. That or you're not tracking your data. Either way, you should not be trusted with millions of dollars of taxpayer money because clearly you guys cannot be trusted with it. You should not be allowed anywhere near taxpayer money if that's what's happening. And you are more likely, 3 times more likely to die than get a job if you go through the LEAD program. It's basically just a get out of jail free card. Up next, my friends, currently at the Seattle City Council, they are rallying for $300,000 to fund the trans refugee crisis. What? What is this nonsense? Tell you all about it and how they're going to waste your money next when we come back. You're listening to The Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI. Welcome back to the Ari Hoffman Show. Just a reminder, if you missed any part of the show, you can catch the Ari Hoffman Show Reloaded coming up from 6 to 7 p.m. right here on Talk Radio 570 KVI, sponsored by our friends over at Wade's Eastside Guns and Bellevue Indoor Range, Puget Sound's premier destination for everything firearms. Don't forget, you can also subscribe to our podcast at whatever your preferred podcast platform is. Back in May, a whole bunch of people on the left started claiming there was a trans refugee crisis. And I said, I am not seeing this increase anywhere. What the hell are they talking about? Tens of thousands of trans people fleeing red states and coming to Seattle. And I said, if that's the case, I'd see a lot more people on mass transit. If that's the case, I'd see a lot less vacancy rates around here. But no, that's not what we're seeing.
I saw something, I think it was in The Stranger about this, of course.
Yes.
And it was like double what usually, or triple what usually they have trans people needing help with housing or jobs or whatever coming here. And I want to say it was like, usually we get like 30 or 40, and now it's like 150 or 200. We're overwhelmed. It's like, okay, that's not the same as like having refugees come storming into your city.
Well, also,
like,
it's not
terminology.
Tens of thousands.
Yeah, terminology matters. So that's why I'm like, and I know we're setting this up. You played some of this audio earlier. I'm assuming you're playing the same audio. Way to grab onto something and then blowing it into something like completely on another level.
Yeah. When they say in the clip you're about to hear, tens of thousands of people are coming here. Kevin, if tens of thousands of people were coming here, we'd see it.
You would see it.
Now, I will remember this. When they evacuated all the Afghan refugees, whoever they were, you did see them around.
Yeah.
You did, because don't forget, the planes that were flying them out were from Fort Lewis, and a lot of the resettlement was actually done right here in Washington. In fact, we know because one of them went and killed a National Guard member. But yeah, that was happening here, and we saw them around and actually started seeing some of them in the homeless population. Start seeing some of them begging. Start seeing them in the homeless hotels. You saw that. Where are these tens of thousands of refugees?
Well, I remember when this was first brought up, I can't remember, it was like thrown out there, and you were kind of, what? What are they talking about, right? And so then I go and I saw this piece maybe like a couple days later, and that's where it was like, I don't know, like maybe 1,000 at most? Maybe 1,000 at most. I can't even remember. It's like, would you even notice if 1,000 trans people moved? And where are they going to move? They're going to move probably up to Capitol Hill.
Yeah.
1,000 people.
I wouldn't even notice it. You know why? Because there's so many vacancies up in Capitol Hill. Here's something else, too, by the way. Did we have a massive tens of thousand influx at the Pride Parade this year? Was it bigger attendance than ever? No.
Yeah, I wasn't there. I didn't see it.
I actually checked. Attendance was down this year. So if you got tens of thousands of trans people, don't you think they'd want to go where the trans people are? Sometimes you want to go where everybody knows your name. And they're always glad you came. You want to be where people see your troubles are all the same. You want to go where everybody knows your name, right? Don't you want to do that?
And your gender.
And your gender. And how you identify. And everything else. I'm not saying tens of thousands of these people. So right now, the Seattle City Council is weighing spending $300,000 to address the trans refugee crisis. If you don't have the data, well, hang on, let's do this for a second. Kevin, if tens of thousands of people are coming here, you're going to give each of them $30? Let's do some quick math here. If tens of thousands of these people are coming, $30, about right? That's simple math.
Did they also, again, I'm guessing you're going to play this audio.
Yes.
When they said tens of thousands, I was trying to think language-wise, what is tens of thousands?
It's less than 100,000. It's more than 40,000.
Because that's what I thought.
Yeah.
But the way this person words it, are they talking like 10 to 1,000 people?
Oh,
like,
no, I don't think so.
They said tens of thousands.
Tens of thousands. But then if you have tens of thousands, why 300?
Yeah.
Why not 1 million?
Yeah.
Why not 2 million? Why not 100 million? I shouldn't give them ideas. We have a budget crisis. We can't afford any of this. This is what is being debated today. Now, this is audio from the committee hearing they had where they decided to vote this towards the Seattle City Council. Give a listen.
and one-time funding to the Human Services Department to grant funding to community-based organizations supporting LGBTQIA individuals with essential needs, including, most namely, support with emergency shelter, housing, food access, employment support, and more. So while this is one-time funding, I recognize it is not enough to address the full need, but I believe this is a start and signals our commitment that the City of Seattle will remain a welcoming city to the queer and trans community.
Council members, I want to impress upon you the seriousness of the crisis transgender people are facing in this country. If I were in Idaho right now, I would be in prison for using the bathroom as a trans woman. This is an offense which can be punished with a sentence up to life. This is a genocide.
I'm here as a swarm of bees because trans people are pollinators of political issues. Dedicating a section of the budget to fund...
Hang on a second. The swarm of bees lady, she is dressed as a beehive. She is dressed as a bee. Does she identify as a bee? That's a little bonkers crazy to me, Kevin.
And her delivery is like she thinks she's doing, I don't know, like a radio commercial or something. Her delivery is very interesting.
Well, it's like the tree people, right?
Oh, yes, yeah.
The tree people.
Yes,
There's
tree
a
people.
hole in the sky where a tree once stood. Somebody's making money. I mean, the people at public comment are insane. You're going to give in to this? I will remind everybody of the following. Do you remember, it wasn't last summer, it was the summer before, when a whole bunch of, it's 2 summers ago, when a whole bunch of illegal aliens showed up demanding that we pay, the Seattle City Council pay for their housing in Kent at a hotel. They occupied Seattle City Hall, and they occupied the tennis courts at Garfield High School, which I'm like, okay, I don't really know what Garfield High School has to do with any of this. What, you just picked one of the most woke high schools you could find? Let's occupy their tennis courts? Let's do that? Oh, I guess now they're pickleball courts, right? Not tennis courts. Until the Seattle City Council caved and decided to give them money. This is the new grift. You show up, you demand money, and the Seattle City Council will give it to you. If only somebody could have predicted this and put it in a national outlet for everybody to, oh, wait, there was that guy, Ari Hoffman. He actually predicted this and wrote it for a national outlet. What's the date on this that I wrote this for the New York Post? May 28th, 2026. Headline, Seattle debuts the left's latest greedy grift, transgender refugees. If you want to see how I predicted this back in May, give us a text to 206-421-5757. Write the word post. Text the word post to 206-421-5757, and I will send you a copy of the op-ed where Ari predicts the future. You can see me do it in real time. You want a copy of my op-ed calling out this grift, text the word post to 206-421-5757. That's 206-421-5757. Up next, as promised, my friends, Andrea Suarez from We Heart Seattle is in studio to react to this bombshell study about how turning criminals loose doesn't actually fix anything. Give you all details when we come back. You're listening to The Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI. Today's Newsmaker Spotlight is brought to you by Renewal by Andersen, Western Washington doors and windows for every home. In studio right now, we have our friend Andrea Suarez. Why did I ask Andrea to come in today? Because she is reacting to this bombshell report from our friends over at the Washington Policy Center showing that the Law Enforcement Assisted Diversion Program, the LEAD program, doesn't work. You mean actually releasing criminals from jail doesn't work? And that actually holding people accountable for their actions and that actually forcing them to get jobs and forcing them to get drug treatment might actually work? Andrea, I'm shocked. I've never seen anything like this in my life.
Imagine that. Just a little common sense, maybe 2011 would have saved a lot of lives and saved a lot of businesses and saved a lot of broken families from this horrific program.
Andrea, we had a caller earlier that called with a question, and they said, what's your average life expectancy on the streets? Once you're out of your house, let's say you pick up drugs, right? Let's say it's somebody who's on drugs. What's the average life expectancy out on the streets?
Less than age 50 if you're a homeless drug addict with no access to shelter. But there wasn't, I actually heard the question and I looked and there's not a lot of real specific data out there. But we know, of course, through common sense that if you have really great recovery and rehab programs, some clear-headed time in jail, you're going to live longer than the guy that's living in a tent under a bridge smoking fentanyl all day. We've lost 30,000 people since we've implemented LEAD in the state of Washington.
30,000 people.
Yes.
So the LEAD program, which basically is a get-out-of-jail-free card.
Yes.
I've seen it in action. I've been to the courtroom to watch it happen. And basically, it doesn't matter how many offenses you have. We're going to divert you to something else. You seem more mad than I have ever seen you before because I think you've been screaming this from the rooftops probably a little bit shorter than I have, but around the same amount of time as I have. You see it in the streets every single day. That's what you do now. I mean, what do you feel when you see a bombshell report saying everything you knew to be true?
Well, I mean, obviously it's validating, but it's also just heart-wrenching that this has gone on unchecked for so long. We look at these 18-year-old girls that are out there getting arrested and then diverted when all that parent is hoping and praying every single night is that they get a call from the jail that said, Mom, I've been arrested. I mean, it just gives me chills up and down that we've taken that away from families this long. I've sat in precincts and watched kids leave the precinct and walk away with a social worker or actually a piece of paper that said they're going to go see a social worker later. This program piloted in Belltown in 2011 where I live, and I'm just kind of going back and looking at where did this all start again? And it was intended to keep Black people out of jail because they were disproportionately being incarcerated. So Lisa Dugard created this design, got a MacArthur Award, $625,000 in an award for a design that is now being showed to be factually wrong. And now how many people are disproportionately dying of overdoses? Black people. Why? Because we didn't keep them in jail and mandate treatment.
And if we had, they probably would have went on to a job. At least 50% of them would have gone on to a job, whereas this report says you're lucky if even 30% of the people in the LEAD program, more likely 12 or 13%, go on to lead some kind of productive life, maybe. But there's all the measurable data shows that the LEAD program is a colossal failure. And Andrea, we've seen this thing pushed out North Carolina, New York, New Jersey, California, Maine, Oregon, you name it, it's all across the country, millions of dollars to fund people dying.
People were so desperate for, and that's right, a alternative to incarceration and part of the defund the police movement as well, right? Less cops, more social workers, no parole officers, more social workers. It's all hand in hand. Same with lowering the caseload for defense attorneys as well. You know, hey, there's no defense attorney, so no charge. And so all of these get out of jail free cards over the last 10 years or so have killed our loved ones. I work with providers like Battlefield, Salvation Army. We're out on the ground. I've been into these Plymouth housing as well as LEAD housing, and people are dying. The little baby died, a newborn baby died in 2024 at the Civic Hotel that LEAD ran. It's now still under a lawsuit because the family that owned it couldn't open it back up because of fentanyl and methamphetamine contamination and uninhabitable rooms. And common sense is, Lisa Dugard, I would shout in chambers, how can a person be held accountable when they're allowed to smoke in a hotel room in your gazebos and you're handing them foils and pipe? And we're going to just wait for 2 years for you to build trust with them and they're finally going to decide to give it up? No. It didn't work at all. And she could never explain it and said, well, at least we know how many drugs they're using, Andrea. That's why we give them the foil. That's what she told me.
That's insane.
It's insane. I mean, everyone's like MacArthur Award, brilliant woman. I think I don't know. It's like Eric Zimmerman say, I think she's just misunderstanding her own data or swooned by the MacArthur Genius Award and just got lost into the telephone game that over time we believed that cause was odds and odds was, reality. And here we have number 1 in homelessness growth in the nation, 418%, number 4 in overdose deaths, number 1 in retail theft. Why? Because drugs aren't free, and the LEAD strategy program allows you to steal all day long for your drug habit in a free hotel room. In my backyard, I've seen it firsthand. I live in Belltown. I've been next to her hotels, and all people do is crawl in and all day long with stolen property.
I don't think I've ever seen you this mad before. I really don't. I mean, we've been friends for 4 or 5 years now? I don't think I've ever seen you this mad before.
Bring in a family member, bring in a mother, a father whose kid's still out there who had 18 chances to be arrested and never showed up to their social worker. That is who I'm fighting for, Ari, is those families. I told Christine Moreland today, our friend at The More We Love, and she said, nicely done. I said, I'm not really great at rocking babies on a Saturday morning at your shelter, but I'll scream for you and the families that are losing their babies too. These mothers won't get arrested for possession of fentanyl, be under the Keep Families Together Act. What is going on? Washington is literally dying.
Yep.
And who's been in charge? That LEAD program has been the strategy every time. Eric Evans and our council and different John Scholes. I wrote to him today. I'm like, come on, stop backing up this program. Slowly walk away. We will work with her to redesign it, but it needs to stop now, be audited, do not expand it, and we need to scream that from the mountains. So thank you for bringing this on your show. I know you've been fighting for it as well, but you look at Lewis Park right now, Dr. Jose Rizal Park, you look at the zombies of people out there that would otherwise be arrested and getting well, are waiting for their eventual infield pre-booking diversion. Just got voted on in city council 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Madness.
You and I, right before the World Cup, we're talking with Andrea Suarez, who's in studio with us today. You and I, right before the World Cup, you, me, and Jonathan Cho, went to see these places and how horrible they were and where they shoved everybody for the World Cup. You've been back to these places since then. Are they better or worse than they were before the World Cup?
Exponentially worse. One of my videos, a drug addict told me, Andrea, everybody's coming here because your videos are showing where it's at. The drugs are here at the park. And I went, no, that's not the intent.
Right.
But everybody's coming here. Burien, Tacoma, Snohomish County, where they're enforcing the no sit, no lie laws. Cops are hitting drugs and foil out of the hands. Seattle is absolutely the sanctuary city for drug use. It is absolutely an environmental decimation, humanitarian, public safety. What we're seeing out in the field is, I always say I've never seen it this bad, but I am now saying once again, it is worse than I have ever seen it. Take socialist mayor, soft on crime prosecuting attorney. You can't, get booked because, there's medical declines and not enough defense attorneys. The whole ecosystem is killing our families.
So, Andrea, just before I let you go, you saw this report last night, or you've probably seen it before.
Yeah, I knew it was coming.
You knew it was coming.
I told Eric, I said, you're a data guy. Go look at that lead study. Took him like 24 hours. He goes, this whole thing is flawed.
Yes. And he's a data guy, and he was able to destroy the whole thing in just a day. So those are not my gifts. Math is not my gifts. But he destroyed this thing in a day. I saw it last night. It was embargoed. Now that it's out today, you spoken to anybody in the Trump administration? You spoken to anybody who you work with who are fighting back against these things? Tom Wolf, anybody else like that? You show them these kind of programs?
Yes, we are in chats. Of course, there's a lot of news coming out of L.A. right now with the L.A. homeless fraud.
Yeah.
So there's a lot. Scott Turner's down there. Jonathan Cho's down there covering it. I will be making a phone call to Caitlin McKinney, who sits in HUD. If that falls under her, I reached out to Chief Amy Barden. I said, this is coming. You guys should get out ahead of it. And they're like, oh, well, we'll meet everybody in September, and, we're taking summer break. I'm like, you guys are fools, man. This is a take down once and for all. We're going to cancel harm reduction, no more pipes, no more foils, no more diversion, no more housing first. We're going to start saving lives, and thank God for Donald Trump and the administration, what they're doing.
Yeah, because this is a bombshell report This says everything we all have known for years, but here it is in black and white in plain numbers. Andrea Suarez from We Heart Seattle. Give us your website one time in case people want to give donations to actually solve the problems.
Yeah,
here in Seattle.
WeHeartSeattle.org is spending a lot of time working with Washington Policy Center. When it comes to your Q4 charitable donations, give to Washington Policy Center and We Heart Seattle, nonprofits doing work to save lives and turn the ship around.
And also, together with The More We Love and We Heart Seattle, we might have a big announcement project we're working on sometime soon. More on that after summer break is over. Only good news to wrap up the show. Good news headlines put a smile on your face heading into your evening commute. You're listening to the Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI. Only good news to wrap up another amazing episode of the Ari Hoffman Show right here on Talk Radio 570 KVI. Don't forget, if you missed any part of the show, you can always sign up for the podcast, but also you get another hour of the Ari Hoffman Show coming up from 6 to 7 p.m. during the Ari Hoffman Show Reloaded, brought to you by our friends over at Wade's East Side and Guns. So remember, you get that from 6 to 7 p.m. right after we're done here. The Seattle City Council has still not voted on this trans refugee resolution, so we're going to have to update you on that tomorrow. Instead, we've got actual good news for you. Now, remember at the time when this next program was launched, everybody made fun of it? You remember that Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy said, I'm going to hire a whole bunch of video game kids to be the air traffic controllers? And people said, really? I said, this makes perfect sense. This makes perfect sense because kids who are staring at screens all day, shouldn't they get paid to stare at screens all day? And also, you are now upgrading the entire air traffic control system. So you need people who actually know how to use this technology and the guys who've been working on stuff that still has floppy disks. My favorite of that is my kids who go, hey, Dad, look, it's a 3D printed version of the save icon. I said, no, that's what we actually used to have to use to play computer games and run computer programs. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy announced on Sunday that due to their campaign to recruit video gamers as air traffic controllers, they had nearly met their full hiring goals. Quote, in April, we launched a new campaign to recruit video gamers as air traffic controllers and supercharge the entire hiring process to get the best, brightest in faster. He said the results are historic. 94% of hiring goal met. Fastest time ever to reach target. 2,000 plus hired. The most in a single year, 2,000 plus best, brightest candidates in the pipeline, reaching the academy quicker than any class before them. Thanks to the most streamlined hiring process, we're building the strongest, sharpest workforce in aviation history. That's truly incredible. It really, really is. You get that so quickly. According to the Post-Millennial, the revelation comes as the aviation industry has faced headwinds both privately and federally, as funding legislation battles have repeatedly thrown air traffic control into the midst of stubborn political disputes. Recent federal shutdowns and funding disputes have placed additional pressure on the FAA, raising concerns about staffing, delays, and the ability of the agency to maintain normal operations with reduced or no funding. Air traffic control has remained a particular concern because of the specialized training required for the position and the time it takes to bring in new employees into the workforce. The staffing shortage has also drawn increased attention from lawmakers and the Trump administration as officials look for ways to prevent potential future disruptions from becoming widespread. 43-day federal government shutdown that was from October 1st to November 12, 2025, was triggered by a longstanding legislative standoff over expiring Affordable Care Act insurance subsidies. Senate Democrats repeatedly blocked House spending bills that omitted certain health care credits, plunging the nation into the historic 43-day funding crisis. The shutdown placed immediate pressure on already strained aviation system, forcing roughly 13,000 essential air traffic controllers to manage high-stress shifts entirely without pay. This halt to the overall recruitment pipeline severely complicated ongoing urgent efforts to rebuild and modernize the nation's specialized aviation workforce amid persistent year-over-year staffing shortages, and that's according to CNBC. You thought that was according to Fox? No, that's according to CNBC. Think about this, by the way. When something broke at air traffic control, they had to go on eBay to find the parts for it, and it was becoming a bigger and bigger problem. So now they're modernizing the entire thing. You got to ask yourself the following question. We've had a lot of Democrats and Republicans since the Reagan years, the last time we had a big crisis in aviation. Let's see who we had. We had Bush, Clinton, Bush, Obama, Trump, Biden. Nobody dealt with this until now. So is it really all Sean Duffy? Hey, that road rules guy still knows his road rules, or airplane rules, or whatever it is. Putting that guy in charge of transportation, a lot of people joked about it, but it seems like things are actually looking up. Here's another local story for you from the Seattle Times. A piece of Seattle history is on the market, and it could be yours for $29 million. Now, the picture is the R in Rainier Brewery. And I was thinking, they're charging $29 million for the R? You could get one of those made for just a couple grand. No, it's the entire brewery is for sale. So if you want to buy Soto's old Rainier Brewery, the mixed-use complex at 3100 Airport Way South, recognized from I-5 by its neon R sign, it is up to sale. Now, here's the thing that I don't understand. I remember driving past that thing when they were redoing it, and Georgetown was becoming this trendy office location and a trendy nightlife. And this was what? This was all pre-COVID. 2017, 2018, maybe a little bit before that, maybe 2012-ish, something like that.
Yeah, something like that. There was a couple of media events that they'd put down in some of the lofts and some of the spaces that they were trying to make a thing down there. And every time I'd get down there, it would be next to kind of where they'd have some of these breweries and whatnot. And I'm like, yeah, this is actually kind of cool.
It's kind of cool.
It's kind of cool. And then it's like, I'm barely ever gonna come down here because it's way the heck down here.
Yeah.
It's kind of the pain in the ass to get here. But it's cool when you're there.
Me and my wife went to some of the establishments down there. And then COVID hit. And then the crime hit. And now they're selling the thing that was supposed to be the next great hope. So good luck getting the $29 million for the Rainier Brewery. I'll take the R. We can put it on top of the studio. That way you know where we are, because know where we are. Get it? That'll do it for us today. Fear not, we'll be back tomorrow with more insane stories, more exciting guests, and, of course, more giveaways. Reloaded is up next. You've been listening to The Ari Hoffman Show on Talk Radio 570 KVI.